He wasn't from the streets. He wasn't a gang member, but in Spokane Valley, a 15-year-old suburban kid with dreams of music and family loyalty somehow found himself in the crosshairs of one of America's most feared gangs, 18th Street. What started as small arguments and teenage drama spiraled into something darker, with betrayal at its center. And when his own girlfriend set him up, it wasn't just beef anymore. It was a death sentence. This is the story of the white rapper who played a dangerous game and paid the ultimate price. You see, gangs in Spokane and Spokane County really started making noise back in the early 1980s, and the main reason behind it was crack cocaine. This wasn't just another drug. It was the spark that pulled gangs out of big cities and into smaller communities. Crack first exploded in places like New York, Los Angeles, and Miami around 1984 and 1985. And once gangs saw how much money it brought in, they began spreading out. Spokane, a city that hadn't really dealt with large-scale drug markets or gang violence before, suddenly became part of the map. By the mid-1980s, law enforcement in Spokane County noticed something different. Gang members from Southern California, especially Los Angeles, were showing up. The first wave in the late 80s included groups like the Palmer Block Crips and Rolling 60s Neighborhood Crips. A few years later, in the early 90s, the Insane Crips and Rolling 20s Crips came in, right around the time California introduced its tough 3 strikes law. By 1996, the 8 Trey Gangster Crips had planted themselves in Spokane and were running a big part of the crack trade. Once those groups took root, more followed. Gangs from places like Seattle, Chicago, Nevada, Texas, and Arkansas started moving in. Some came with military connections, others just wanted to get away from the heavy violence back home, and a few were looking to raise families in a new setting. But wherever they came from, they carried gang culture and the drug trade with them. Local youth got caught up in it fast. A lot of kids who weren't originally involved started forming their own gangs, taking cues from the outsiders who had moved in. Those new local sets ended up beefing with each other, fighting over drug corners and gang identity. In response, even more crews started forming, some out of ambition, others strictly for protection. As they got bigger, many of these local gangs either linked up with the older, more established groups or fought to prove themselves through violence. By the early 2000s, the gang landscape in Spokane had shifted again. Many of the original local gangs started splintering into subsets or cliques. These smaller groups had their own names but still fell under the same rules and structure as their parent gangs. They worked as feeder crews for younger kids looking to get in, while also giving the main gangs a layer of protection from law enforcement by letting juveniles take the risks. At the same time, the lines between gangs were starting to blur. It became harder to tell who was with who because groups began working together more often, focusing less on old rivalries and more on making money. Their crimes also expanded. Drugs were still the backbone, but gangs started dipping into other hustles just to protect their profits. It wasn't just Black and Latino street gangs anymore either. Skinheads, white supremacist groups, and outlaw motorcycle gangs started carving out space in Spokane as well. But what really sets Spokane's gang scene apart from other cities is how unpredictable it is. The same national gangs you'd recognize in bigger places are there, but the alliances and rivalries don't always follow the script. Sometimes crews cling to old beefs. Other times they'll cross lines and team up if there's money on the table. The mix of people, backgrounds, and outside influences shaped Spokane into a gang environment with its own rules. And history was only the setup. The real storm was still on the way. In Spokane County, the streets have been getting louder with gunshots, and law enforcement says gang and gun violence ain't slowing down. Jack Hebner, who runs the Fulcrum Institute, believes folks are still in denial about how deep the problem really is. To him, there's no real plan on the table, no strong push to fix what's breaking. His institute focuses on stopping gang activity before it grows, and he points to guns as the main reason people keep losing their lives. He reminded people of mass shootings like Sandy Hook, Florida, and the tragedies in Colorado and Texas, saying America has gotten numb to all of it. Since the pandemic started, shootings have gone way up, and Spokane is no exception. Even the Spokane Police Gang Task Force is speaking up. One of their plainclothes officers, who couldn't be named for safety, said gangs in the county are more active than they've been in years. It's not that new gangs are popping up, but with the pandemic keeping people locked in, young folks started finding themselves bored, restless, and looking for somewhere to belong. The closures of schools and community spaces only made things worse, leaving kids wide open for the streets to grab them. That officer made it clear there's been a big jump in youth gang activity. Kids are lashing out and acting reckless, not fully understanding the weight of what they're doing. Society might treat shootings like background noise now, but these teens don't always get that pulling a trigger ends a life forever. Two things keep pulling young people toward gangs. First, the need to belong. If someone doesn't feel connected to family, school, or something positive, they'll run to any group that makes them feel included, even if that group is destructive. Second, the isolation from the pandemic cut off sports, activities, and face-to-face connections. That silence created a void, and the streets were quick to fill it. Spokane Police Chief Craig Meidel revealed that in 2021, shootings in the city had almost quadrupled compared to the year before. Drive-bys were running up the numbers so bad that even older gang members told cops the youngsters had lost control. Sheriff Ozzie Gnezovich echoed that, saying this new generation doesn't care about rules, codes, or consequences. They'll kill without hesitation. But one officer said the shift is bigger than most people realize. Back in the day, gangs followed a certain code, but that respect is long gone. Older members admit they try to steer the younger ones, but the answer is always the same. They don't care. He compared it to the Wild West, where anything goes. A lot of it, he explained, comes down to the absence of male role models in these kids' lives. And soon, that street chaos would claim an innocent life. On March 29th, 2021, tragedy hit Spokane Valley when 15-year-old freshman Preston got caught up in a setup he never saw coming. Growing up, Preston and his sister were mostly raised by their grandmother on their dad's side, but they still shared a close bond with their father. Fishing trips, movie nights, sports with his dad coaching, those were some of the memories that shaped him. When his father passed away, Preston leaned even more on his uncle Mike, who stepped up and became a strong figure in his life. Around that same time, Nicole had her daughter Mariah, and Preston instantly took on the role of a protector and role model. He treated Mariah like his own child, feeding her, watching her when Nicole was busy, and always trying to make her laugh. Nicole said Mariah was his world. He would always talk about wanting to give her everything they never had: the sun, the moon, the stars. Just weeks before the tragedy, Preston had already decided he wanted to go into construction, but his dreams weren't for himself. His motivation was taking care of his family. His sister, Caitlin Cooper, remembered how he'd talk about giving his niece the world and paying back their grandma for everything she had done. For someone so young to think that way, it showed just how selfless he truly was. His other sister, Nicole, described him as a regular teenager. He made the same mistakes a lot of kids make, sleeping in, playing video games too much, not wanting to go to school some days. But she never thought he was involved in a gang. To her, he was just her brother, navigating the ups and downs of being a teen. His cousin, Ashley Latta, remembered him as outgoing and full of energy. School didn't always come easy for him, but he worked hard because he wanted to make his grandma proud. On top of that, he was carrying the heavy loss of his father, who had passed away in a motorcycle accident in 2019, just 2 years before Preston was supposed to start high school. Losing his dad shook him deeply, but it also shaped the way he carried himself. But that night, Preston got a Snapchat from his friend, 17-year-old Daisy Red Thunder. She told him she was just 10 minutes away and wanted to buy a vape pen, but that was a lie. Daisy was actually nowhere near him. The real plan was to lure him outside. Waiting in the shadows was her boyfriend, Yoler, a member of the 18th Street Blue Devil Street gang. As soon as Preston stepped out of his apartment at 9717 East 6th Avenue, everything went left. Yoler was there in the parking lot, and not long after, shots rang out. Deputies with the Spokane Valley Sheriff's Office rushed over after multiple 911 calls about gunfire around 10:50 p.m. They found Preston bleeding with life-threatening wounds. First responders tried everything they could, but it was too late. The boy died shortly after. An autopsy later confirmed it was homicide. Neighbors heard the chaos that night. Jill Kennedy, who lives nearby, remembered hearing 3 booming gunshots that were so loud they rattled her dog, Butters. Jill described the neighborhood as a mix of different housing, including low-income apartments, but said most of the families there are good people just trying to live. In her eyes, the complex where it happened was actually one of the better managed ones she'd seen. Investigators quickly pieced together what went down. Deputies said Preston walked outside to meet someone and was ambushed. Witnesses reported seeing a person dressed in dark clothes running from the scene. Some even caught details of what happened right after. One neighbor said she saw Yoler toss a handgun over a fence, jump it, then scoop the gun back up before disappearing. Another witness noticed Preston jogging like he had spotted somebody, then running back toward the apartment he'd just left. A man in a black coat chased him, and seconds later, gunshots shattered the night, followed by Preston's scream. Surveillance cameras backed it all up. The footage showed the shooter slipping into the complex, hanging around near a garage, then sprinting straight toward Preston's last known location. Moments later, 6 gunshots and a scream echoed through the night, sealing a young boy's fate. By the next morning, police were already back in the Woodruff Heights complex, moving in with the search warrant while kids with backpacks walked to the bus stop like it was just another school day. Around 8 a.m., they called Tenant Joni Martin and told her to step outside with her family. She lives there with her boyfriend and their 5 kids, including a 15-year-old stepson. Joni thought the police just wanted to talk to the boy, but as soon as they got outside, they cuffed him up and took him to the Spokane Valley precinct. The teenager broke down in tears, scared and confused, with no idea why he was being dragged away. Joni had already heard the chaos the night before. She remembered the sound of gunshots, then the blare of sirens. Looking out her sliding glass door, she saw medics trying to save a young boy she recognized instantly. He had been at her apartment just days earlier playing video games with her stepson. The two never had issues, but now her stepson was being questioned as if he was part of something bigger. Her stepson had already been through a rough year. The previous summer, he was stabbed while out with friends chopping wood. To Joni, it felt like her boy was being forced to relive trauma he didn't deserve. She insisted there were no weapons in her house, yet police searched the apartment from top to bottom after taking him away. A few hours later, they finally told her she could pick him up. But the tension didn't stop there. While Joni was gone, her husband ended up in a heated argument with the uncle of the boy who had been killed. One man paced around wrapped in a blanket, the other smoked a cigarette and hurled insults until investigators stepped in to split them apart. Authorities believed the shooting wasn't random, but tied to an ongoing conflict between the victim and others in the area. Witnesses had spotted someone dressed in dark clothes running from the scene that night, but nobody had been arrested yet. Meanwhile, Preston's family was left shattered. His older sister, Nicole, had already taken on a motherly role after their father died in a motorcycle accident back in 2019. She helped her grandmother raise Preston, and the bond between her and her little brother only grew stronger. Losing him felt like losing her own son. Nicole described him as outgoing, goofy, and full of life, the type to joke around, dance, or even ding-dong ditch like any other teenager. But beyond that, he was the kind of kid who carried the weight of others, always smiling, always making sure his family was okay. His grandmother Betty and his aunt Jamie echoed those same feelings. To them, Preston had a heart of gold, always putting family first. He'd been through hard times after losing his dad, but he never let it kill his spirit. They called him a friend to everyone, someone who could brighten a room just by walking in. Now, his family just wants justice. Nicole admitted it hurts, knowing the shooter is still out there, running free, while they're left grieving a brother, a son, and an uncle who should still be here. That morning, as the sun broke through, she said it gave her comfort, like a sign that her little brother had finally made it home. By April 2021, detectives with the Spokane County Sheriff's Office were digging into the details of Preston Grzegorik's death, even looking at whether something as small as a vape pen could have played a role. For Preston's sister Nicole, the pain was still raw. She said her family was broken, still trying to make sense of why someone would take her little brother's life. She admitted she had no idea who could have done it, but was holding on to hope that detectives would bring justice. Investigators kept things tight since it was still an active case, but Corporal Mark Gregory did confirm that information pointed to an argument or a vape pen deal possibly being tied to the shooting. They were still chasing down evidence, still trying to lock down the truth. Nicole didn't know of any beef her brother had with anyone. To her, there was no excuse. Nothing Preston could have done that made taking his life make sense. The loss hit even harder because just 2 years earlier, their father had died in a motorcycle accident. Preston had been raised mostly by his grandmother, with Nicole stepping in to help. She found a small bit of peace believing her brother was now reunited with their dad. but the grief weighed heavy. While the family mourned, investigators closed in on their suspect. Court documents showed that surveillance footage and anonymous tips all pointed toward 19-year-old Stephen Yoler. The video reportedly captured him chasing Preston in those final moments before the gunfire. Detectives secured a felony warrant for first-degree murder, and by May 2021, Yoler and his girlfriend were in handcuffs. The U.S. Marshals Pacific Northwest Violent Offender Task Force tracked Yoler to a home on South Coach in Spokane Valley. Because of the violent nature of the crime, SWAT rolled out. But in the end, Yoler simply walked out of the house and surrendered without a fight. Detectives searched the home while Yoler was booked into the Spokane County Jail. Reports later revealed that while inside, he picked up tattoos for the 18th Street Gang, tying him even deeper to the street life. Meanwhile, detectives discovered Daisy Red Thunder, who had lured Preston outside that night, was hiding in Sparks, Nevada. Spokane detectives contacted Sparks police, who found her and made the arrest. She was later ordered back to Spokane County to face a murder charge of her own. Even after being arrested, Yoler tried to play it off. In an interview, he denied everything, saying that if there really was surveillance video, police would have had him locked up much sooner. He downplayed any connection to Preston, claiming the only way he knew him was through Snapchat. He insisted there was no personal beef, only rumors about disagreements between their people. But investigators painted a different picture. They said the surveillance video clearly showed Yoler chasing Preston before the shots went off. They matched his face using his driver's license photo. And according to court documents, Yoler's own girlfriend gave him up. She told detectives that Yoler confessed to her directly, admitting he shot Preston 6 times. She described him as scared and crying when he told her, saying he had to do it and believing that Preston wanted him dead. On May 7, 2021, Stephen Yoler stood before the court on a first-degree murder charge. Judge Jennifer Fassbender made it clear that Yoler wasn't the only one facing heat. His 17-year-old girlfriend, Daisy Red Thunder, was also being charged as an accessory. Inside the Spokane County District Courthouse, Preston Grzegoryk's family and friends sat anxiously, waiting for Yoler to pop up on the screen. When he finally appeared, dressed in a yellow jail jumpsuit, all they could do was shake their heads, still in disbelief that this was the reality. The setup that led to Preston's death had been carefully laid out. Court documents revealed that on April 29th, Red Thunder arranged to meet Preston at the apartment complex on East 6th Avenue to buy a vape pen. She messaged him like she was on her way, even making it sound like she had already arrived. But the truth was different. She wasn't even close. She was in Spokane the whole time, with no plans of showing up. A teenage friend of hers later told police about the ruse. That same friend also claimed Preston had posted on Snapchat that he put a $1,000 bounty on Yoler's head. Police never found the post themselves, but whether it was real or just talk, it fed the tension. Detectives believe Yoler was hiding behind a garage that night, waiting for Preston to step outside. A neighbor said Preston walked into the lot, looked like he spotted someone, then tried to run back, but he didn't make it. The investigation uncovered even more layers. Another girlfriend of Yoler's, an older woman not facing charges, told police she had been living with Yoler and other 18th Street gang members. The day after Preston's murder, Yoler grabbed his things and the two of them hid out with another gang member before catching a flight to Reno. In Reno, Yoler confessed to her that he killed Preston because he believed Preston would have killed him first. But their relationship quickly went sour, and she flew back to Spokane after he put his hands on her. Not long after, Yoler brought Red Thunder out to Reno. Police later tied the trip together through plane tickets and messages. Around that time, Yoler started bragging to his friends about what he'd done. One friend said Yoler admitted to killing Preston, even laughing about still having blood on his shoes. According to this same friend, Yoler described how he chased Preston down and unloaded his entire pistol clip into him. He bragged about finding a fine female, Red Thunder, to help set up the plan. What made it sting even more for the Grzegoryk family was how Red Thunder played her role after the fact. She showed up to Preston's vigil and even his funeral, crying with the rest of the family, all while knowing she was part of the setup. For Preston's loved ones, the pain was unbearable. His cousin, Caitlin Cooper, called it sickening to watch Daisy show zero remorse in court. She thanked those who had the courage to come forward and had harsh words for those who stayed silent. His sister, Nicole Grzegorek, said sitting through the hearing made her sick to her stomach. She admitted she wanted to scream, cry, and do everything at once. To her, it was clear. Her brother had been set up that night, and nothing could undo the pain that followed. By May 2022, the case had already taken a big turn. Daisy Red Thunder, just 18 years old at the time, stood in court and admitted her role in the setup that led to Preston Grzegorek's death. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit first-degree assault and 2 counts of first-degree rendering criminal assistance. Even though she had originally been charged with first-degree murder, the deal meant she was now facing up to 10 years in prison and a $20,000 fine for each felony count. Fast forward to November 2023, and all eyes were on the man who pulled the trigger, Stephen Yoler. The jury sat through hours of testimony and evidence before finally delivering their verdict. Prosecutor Preston McCollum laid it all out, showing Yoler's ties to the 18th Street Blue Devil Street gang. He even played a rap track where Yoler bragged about details connected to the crime. Yoler himself admitted on the stand that he was still linked to the gang, and Daisy, along with other witnesses, testified against him. McCollum said the case revealed just how deep gang culture runs in Spokane. In the end, Yoler was found guilty on 4 counts: first-degree aggravated murder, first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with a witness. The court determined the killing wasn't just personal, it was tied to gang business. The charges made it clear that Yoler carried out the murder to keep or boost his rank in the gang, and the fact that he used Daisy, who was still a minor at the time, only made it worse. When the trial ended, Judge McCollum took a moment to recognize Preston's family for showing up every single day, filling the courtroom with strength and support. Preston's loved ones, in turn, expressed nothing but gratitude to the jury. His uncle, Mike Grzegorek, said the world was a better place with Yoler off the streets. Nicole, another family member who watched the trial from start to finish, believed Yoler lied on the stand over and over. She also pointed out that Daisy, Yoler's girlfriend, testified against him and seemed to finally show remorse, especially since Preston had once been her friend. For Nicole, the guilty verdict meant some closure. She said Yoler deserved life behind bars and thanked the jurors for giving her family justice. Preston's aunt, Patricia Carlson, spoke about the pain that never goes away. She said no verdict could bring Preston back, but it gave the family a chance to start healing. She also shared how hard it was knowing Preston's sister would now grow up alone without siblings, and that she herself would never get the chance to be an aunt. For her, the guilty verdict didn't erase the loss, but it gave a small measure of peace and the hope of moving forward. In January 2024, Spokane County Superior Court Judge Jacqueline High Edward handed Daisy Red Thunder, who was just 17 at the time of the shooting, a 5-year prison sentence. But the bigger moment came that summer. On July 25th, 2024, her boyfriend, Stephen Yoler, faced his fate. The 22-year-old was sentenced to life without parole. The courtroom was packed that day. When the judge announced Yoler would never walk free again, Preston Grzegorek's family and friends couldn't hold back. Applause and cheers broke out. Judge Annette Placey spoke directly to Yoler, telling him that if anyone at 19 years old ever deserved life, it was him. The sentencing dragged on for nearly 3 hours, filled with emotional testimony and heartbreaking statements from Preston's loved ones. Yoler sat there in his red jail uniform, stone-faced, choosing not to say a word. Neighbor and family friend Eileen Caseru recalled the image she can't erase from her memory: Preston's lifeless body on the ground that night in the Spokane Valley complex. She told the court the memory still takes her breath away. Prosecutor Preston McCollum made it clear this wasn't random, this wasn't spur of the moment. It was cold, calculated. The evidence showed Yoler had been lurking, waiting for Preston to step outside, texting back and forth with Red Thunder for 6 minutes to set him up. Preston, unarmed and unsuspecting, walked right into an ambush. McCollum said Yoler wasn't just killing out of anger. He was trying to climb ranks in his gang, sick of being a little homie and hungry to be a big homie. He even bragged about it afterward, getting tattoos tied to the murder and recording a rap track about the killing. His defense attorney, Brian Raymond, pushed for a lighter 25-year sentence, arguing Yoler had no prior record and could use his time to turn his life around. He brought in experts to explain Yoler's background, including psychologist Dr. Nathan Henry, who said Yoler suffered from PTSD from childhood trauma. Henry explained that trauma and immaturity often lead to reckless decision-making. But Judge Plessy wasn't buying it. She pointed out that Yoler's actions were premeditated, not impulsive. He chased Preston down, cornered him, and pulled the trigger. The pain from Preston's death spilled through every statement. His aunt, Patricia Carlson, read words written by Preston's mother, Betty. Betty described 3 years of unbearable grief, saying she often wishes she could join her son. She reminded the court of everything her boy would never get to do: graduate, go to college, fall in love, start a family. She recounted his final moments, filled with fear and gasped for air. Betty also shared how she had to move after gang members drove through her apartment complex, fearing she'd be next. Preston's sisters added their voices too. Caitlin Cooper read a statement from their sister Nicole, who spoke about how much her daughter loved her Uncle Preston. Nicole described him as someone who always made people laugh, the kind of person who'd give you the shirt off his back. She said losing him left a hole that will never close, not in 30 years, not ever. The night she heard he was killed, she cried so hard her eyes swelled shut. To her, Preston's death is every sibling's worst nightmare, one that left her battling depression, panic attacks, and anxiety. Nicole's final words were simple but sharp. Stephen made a choice, and that choice stole Preston's youth. For Nicole, the tragedy also lit a fire for change. She pointed out how easy it is for teens in Spokane to get guns, and how much worse youth gun violence feels now compared to when she was growing up. The numbers don't lie. Spokane's homicides tripled from 2019 to 2020, and by early 2021, teen deaths by gunfire had already matched the previous year's toll. Nicole and Caitlin both believe tougher crackdowns on illegal gun ownership are needed. They stressed how something as simple as arguments, the kind that used to end in fistfights, now too often end in gunshots. Nicole summed it up with disgust. Kids treat guns like toys when they're bored, and it's tearing families apart. What are your thoughts on this story? Appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.